Spa is one of the most iconic tracks on the planet. Incredibly fast sections like Eau Rouge and Blanchiment, coupled up with lots of very technical corners to create one of the best drivers circuits on the F1 calendar. So what's it like to race at Spa? Well, this weekend I've been invited by Revolution Racecars to race in their new championship, and we are supporting the World Endurance Championship at Spa. The car is the Revolution A1, a 440 brake horsepower per tonne sports prototype car that's got a carbon chassis and plenty of power. So I'm going to show you some insights into the race weekend through qualifying and both the races that I took part in, what I learned about the car and the circuit, and how I got on during the race weekend at Spa. So because it's a World Endurance Championship weekend with the LMP1, LMP2 cars and so on, we're a little bit restricted on testing time. So today we've got 20 minutes of free practice, then tomorrow we go into a 30-minute qualifying session. That gives us plenty of time actually tomorrow to make some changes on the car and get it feeling how I want it to. And then over the next 2 days we have two 1-hour races. In terms of the feeling of driving a car like this, you know, it's 440 horsepower, it's got lots of torque, and it's got a good amount of aerodynamic force which will really come into play around this Spa circuit. So it's a joy to drive. This car in particular has quite a big window in which to play, by which I mean it's a very drivable car. When you move the car into the limit and you feel it sliding around, it doesn't just want to throw you off the track, it actually feels quite friendly in that area, which makes it a pleasure to drive.
So on your outlaps, how do you build up to know your braking points coming into like a heavy braking zone like this?
So for like a corner like this, you're getting information as you go, even on your outlap. So we'll be going out the pits, you know, getting a feel for it, going up Eau Rouge, down the straight. First time you get on the brakes at Lacombe, I'll probably get on the brakes a bit earlier than I would do normally, but I would increase the brake pressure as I'm going through the braking phase until the tyres begin to lock up and break traction, and that way you get a feeling inside you where you know that maximum G-force of the deceleration there. Granted, you might stop like 20 metres before the corner. I don't mean stop, I mean slow the car down enough for the corner. 20 metres too early, but at least you'll know how powerful the brakes are and how grippy the tyres are under deceleration, and then you can extrapolate that when I come around here. You know, I know the circuit well, I'll understand where I can brake pretty quickly after that.
So how was that?
Yeah, as I mentioned, Spa's very different to Brands Hatch where I previously drove this car. It was a good session. There's lots of room for improvement with the setup of the car. I actually got quite a lot of understeer, so mid-corner understeer, meaning as I'm bringing the car into the apex and releasing the brakes, the front just doesn't bite the track how I want it to, and that means a delay to getting back on the throttle pedal, hence slowing my exit out the corner and carrying less speed down the following straight. So there's some work to do on the setup there. I want to try and make the car a bit more stable in the high speed corners as well, but plenty of room for improvement before qualifying tomorrow. So I'm just behind Nigel here at the start of the race. Our onboard camera didn't work, so that's why we're having to use Nigel's footage. I got a decent start, got a run, and I'm on the right hand side of Nigel here. Always difficult to know where to brake, but I got on the brakes nice and late there. You can see the blue car on the right, which is me. Got a good exit coming out of La Source. Always difficult at the start of the race because you don't know really where the tyres are, how much fuel is in the car. The car's heavier than it was in qualifying. Got a good run coming down to Eau Rouge. I'm round the outside of the car on the left. Took a bit of bravery there
again to go in there flat out, because again you're not exactly sure what the circuit conditions are like. Didn't get a great run down the Kemmel Straight here. As you can see, Nigel's getting a run on the car in front of him, who is in turn getting a good run on me, but I'm defending over to the right. I know that I'm pretty safe. Now I bring the car over to the left hand side, and luckily in front of me one of the cars runs wide, and I'm behind Alex Carpedia here in the yellow car, make it round the outside of Don's, who's just slipped into third position there, and I'm in second position here. A really good start from fifth on the grid after my difficult qualifying session. And now I'm just trying to figure out how the car feels, what the balance is like, and as it happened it had a bit of understeer in it here, but I'm gaining on Alex in front of me. We did make a good step forward with the car. So one thing I discovered with this car was that actually it's quite difficult to follow within half a second of the car in front. There's quite a lot of aero wash, so you get some understeer because of the dirty air when you're following the car in front. So as you can see, I had quite a lot of understeer coming through pool.
So it was a bit of a difficult day yesterday, and a little bit disappointing. Really struggling with lots of understeer around here, but I didn't have quite enough pace, to be honest with you. You know, I wasn't pushing the leader that much, so although we made that step forwards, which was quite a big one, we still weren't quite there. So hopefully today we'll actually be able to do that. But after maybe 8 or 9 laps yesterday, we had a mechanical at the front of the car going through Lacombe. So I was running in second, so I had to do 3/4 of a lap, bring the car into the pits. The mechanics here did an absolutely heroic job, managed to fix the car. And then because we're playing catch up with the setup and the development of the car, we actually used the remainder of the race as a test session basically. So I managed to do 2 or 3 runs, 3 or 4 lap runs out on the track, and we came in, made a change, went back out again, and what we were essentially doing was just lowering the front ride height. We did it a couple of times, and what you're doing when you do that is you're moving more of the weight to the front of the car, and so that helps you in the mechanically gripped corners, the slower corners, to have the front loaded up and having a bit more grip at the front of the car. So we made some progression. We still didn't get quite there, so we've made further changes going into the race. We're going to make another 2 changes, lowering the front ride height a little bit more and actually removing some of the rear wing. I think that will help the aero balance. It will make it less understeery in the quicker corners, and of course it will help us because of the reduced drag along the straight. So fingers crossed for today. It's always, as I mentioned yesterday, when you make this number of changes and the progression is so quick, you're just hoping that they all work together well. And of course we've also got the other variables of the track temperature, the WEC, the sports car rubber going into the track during their long sessions as well. So there's many moving parts to this, but yeah, we're just hoping that it all comes together, and actually I know straight away whether the car is going to be quicker or slower than yesterday.
So I just jumped in the car to go over the race debrief because it's a bit noisy outside with all the race cars going around. So that was a really good race. I actually made a really good start and got up into 5th or 6th position on the first lap. Made some good moves going through the first few corners, and then got stuck behind an Aston Martin, but eventually made my way through. It was then that I realised in the first couple of laps that I had the pace to actually win the race. It was an hour-long race, so I knew that I had time to kind of catch the guys in front of me who had stretched out some lead as I'd made my way through the traffic. But instantly, when you get in the car, you know whether the balance is right, how the car's feeling, and that gives you confidence as to whether you are going to be able to have a good result. Even though I got caught up in some traffic and the 4 leaders had moved away from me during the first few laps, I could still see them, and I was catching them up over the next 5 or 6 laps. Eventually we all caught up with the leaders, so we were all in line, first through fourth position, which is where I was. Then the two guys at the front came into the pits, and it was me and Nigel Greensall, who was just in front of me, and I decided to go a bit longer before I pitted, come in. So once we came out the pits, I was actually in second position, a real second position on the track, and it so happened that the leader had made too much of a short stop. So I know in Formula 1 they're trying to make the pit stops as quick as possible, but in most other championships outside of Formula 1 and the World Endurance Championship, there's actually a minimum stop time in the pits, and this is to help safety when the teams might not have quite as many people during the pit stops, so you don't have to rush so much strapping the driver in or putting fuel in the car. So the guy who was in the lead actually undercut his pit stop by 3 or 4 seconds, and so had a stop and go penalty. That then put me in the lead of the race overall, and things were going really well until it started to rain. Any car is very difficult to drive at Spa, especially in these changeable conditions. So when you're driving out there on the track and the rain begins to come in, it's all about feel. But then gradually with time, the grip levels decrease and things start to get slippery. Now this is okay while you can still keep temperature in those slick tyres, but as soon as that temperature goes, that's when things become very, very difficult. Now some of my competitors came in to change for wet tyres, but I decided to risk it and stay out. There was probably only 12 or 13 minutes left of the race, and I didn't think that it was going to rain that much. However, over the next few laps, the rain absolutely started to come down much more heavily, and slicks was definitely the wrong choice. Luckily the safety car came at this point with less than 10 minutes to go, so I still decided to stay out on the slicks because I thought that the safety car period would last longer than the time left in the race. Now, always in these changeable conditions you can be lucky or unlucky. On this occasion we made the right choice, but we were quite lucky in that. But what's more encouraging was that we set the fastest lap. We were quick when it was dry, stable conditions, which from my perspective as a driver is probably just as important as the win. If you did enjoy this vloggy style of video, let us know in the comments, because this is a new format for us, and let us know if you want to know a bit more detail about the racing that I do. So thanks for watching. If you want to find out more about Revolution race cars, I'll link to that in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Driver 61, and I'll catch you next time.